Yes. So HTML, as I was telling you, is basically rooted from HTML or XML. So we have in XML, you guys might have know XML, right? So XML will generally consist of tags. It doesn't have anything. It's generally XML is basically used for holding content and sharing content between different applications. Like when we talk, we communicate with each other with some language, right? So this one format of exchanging language within two different applications, instead of sharing information between user and the computer, it's between sharing between two applications. The recent days people use JSON for that instead of XML, but then XML generally consists of tags like this, where we have starting tag. I mean, start tag will any tag will be enclosed in Angular braces like this, and this will be name of the tag, and the end tag of the same tag will have a slash before it. So the entire content inside it is the content of that particular tag. Now, when we see a person tag, the person tag's content is this. Okay, so this is entire person tag. This is start of person tag, and this is end of person tag. Okay, and this is the content of tag. Content can be anything, and then we call these things as attributes. So attributes is something like which uh, qualify the tag. So it gives more information about the tag more than the content. Okay, so this content can be nested stuff. So this content can be again a nested stuff. A person can have multiple details. We can have kind of uh, name, things like this. Okay, so it can have name and it can have uh, qualification kind of stuff. So things like this. Okay, so but the attributes are something like which actually specify, which qualify it. So what kind of person he is. I mean, we can have anything, but these two different ways of adding data to an XML tag. Okay, so as I was telling you, so this is what XML tag basically consists of. Now the same thing is extended to HTML. When people started wanting to render a web page, they conceived of a concept called as web. They extended the markup. This is any language which has like this, which is used for showing some content, is called as a markup language. This is called as markups. Okay, so now HTML is also a markup language. The full form of HTML is hypertext markup language. So this is extended from XML. So because it's part of XML or HTML, we also have tags in HTML. Same concept. We have tags, but most of the tags here are predefined, so that browser knows how to render when it's reading the HTML page. Okay, so now person tag, I mean in XML we can create any tag, any random tag, foo, dad, these and all those things. Even in HTML we can use our own tags, but those tags will not be rendered in HTML. They'll be rendered as it is. Let's say, so let's say I have my HTML tag like this, and let's say I have a body one, and close my body one. Now let's say I'm trying to save it on my desktop, test.html. Now when I open this, so it's not rendered. It doesn't know how to render. But if it's something, if in the same place, if I have something else, let's say I have a content over here. Instead of going to developer console, we'll do it here only. So, and let's say I have a, I'll tell you about anchor tag later, just to show you a difference. So now if you see, oh, I have to put it inside the body, and then I have to add a href to show you the difference. Okay, so now if you see, browser was able to render a tag called as href, anchor tag, right? So if you see, the selected one was anchor tag. The body, it just rendered as it is. It doesn't know what is body one, because, or any other tag which is not defined by HTML or W3C standards. So W3C is something like an organization that actually takes care of building new features, developing HTML, introducing new concepts, kind of organization. It's a kind of community where people try to improvise HTML features and all those things. Okay. So now going back to this. So now we have this, right? So this is a basic, as there are different versions of HTMLs, and we have in each different version new tags were introduced. Like uh, in HTML5 we have many new tags that were not part of HTML4, and when initially HTML5 was introduced, all the browsers were not supporting all the tags of HTML5. Some tags were supported, some tags were not supported, and some browsers were not even supporting HTML5. Okay, so so in that kind of scenarios, the browser should know which version of HTML it should use when it is rendering the page. For that purpose, what we do is we declare a doc type, document type. What is what kind? How should my browser render my HTML page? HTML page is same, but with what version of HTML it should render is what doc type specifies. We'll see an example for this. So when you see this, you might see this kind of definition in the latest, all kind of latest web pages. So this is generally used for this short notation is used for HTML5, any HTML5 web page. So this, whenever we see this, we can understand that it's an HTML5, but it's not a, it's actually not a document type definition that I was telling you. So general document type definition will be something like this. Okay. So the doc type will have a root element. So because I was telling you it's an XML, it's an extension of XML. XML was extended from SGML or XML. So the root element can be anything. But in HTML it's fixed. We should have a root element as HTML. So first thing we mention in the doc type is we mention what is the root element. After that we have an identifier. It's a public. Generally it will be public. There's another thing called a system which people generally don't use. It's a public. So because the pages are generally hosted and it's public. Okay. So once we have public as an identifier, all these things should be separated by a space. Okay. So doc type and what is the root element, and there is a space, and then what is the identifier. It's generally public, and then again space, we have a FPA. It's like extension. When we have any public, we then describe it saying that what kind of public is it, like HTML version. We mention what is the HTML version in it, and then is it transitional or strict. So strict is something like some of the elements in a like, let's say HTML 4.1 is a specification, okay, which is specified by W3C standards. So once W3C says that this is HTML4 and the HTML4 will have all these tags, later point of time W3C decides it don't want to continue with some tags, so they deprecate it or obsolete it. Okay, so at that point of time what happens is when you use transitional, you can still use that kind of deprecated tags, but then when we use strict mode, there is another mode called as strict mode. So when we use strict mode, what happens is those kind of tags which were removed later point of time will not, you can't use that kind of things. So browser will not know how to render those tags even when you use them. So generally it's preferable to use transitional so that the fallback will be there. Even if you don't have, even if you use it by mistake, it will still be rendered. Okay. After that, last one is DTD. DTD is something like a link, a URL where it consists all the tags and the description of it, so that browser will know how to render it. So this is generally, as I was telling you, W3 is a standard. So I will see how what does W3 loose DTD will have, because it's a very huge file. It might take a lot of time. Okay, so this is basically a URL which actually says what are the different tags. This is standard. We don't change it. This is given by W3C Consortium. So it will have all the tags which are part of HTML4 standard. Okay, so this is generally we call it as document type definition. So once this is there, browser will know how to render it, because we are we expect a web page can be open in any browser, right? It can be in Internet Explorer, Chrome or Firefox or anything like that. So to make sure that our web page is consistent across all the browsers, we define it so that all of them will be rendering our web page in same standard. And if we don't do it, if we don't define any doc type, let's say we can still render a web page. Even without defining doc type, we can still render a web page. But the problem with that is when we don't have any doc type, it's called as Quicks mode. Default mode is called as Quicks mode. So when we don't mention any doc type, what happens is the browser renders in the default, its default version, whatever is default version for it when it is built. Because it's a private thing. Chrome is built by Google, Firefox is built by Mozilla, and Internet Explorer is built by Microsoft, right? So they have their own definitions when they're building a browser. If document type is not mentioned, you render the web page in a particular fashion is what they define, and it might not be same with the other browsers. Therefore, when we don't mention doc type, your web page will be sometimes rendered in same way. It may not be rendered in the same way. So it's always better to have a doc type in the top. But then another important point to be noted with this doc type is HTML5 is the latest version of HTML, right? Which we'll be discussing in the future. So HTML5 doesn't require this. We don't have to mention doc type at all because HTML5 is not an extension of HTML or XML. Okay, it doesn't inherit the features of HTML. Therefore, we don't have to mention doc type at all. But it's a good practice to mention doc type in the top because we are still using older browsers which expect some document type definition in the top. So therefore, you can't always, the converse is not true. Whenever, for HTML5, it is good to mention this, but it doesn't mean that if it is not there, it's not HTML5. Even without having this, you can use all the features of HTML5 and the browsers will render it. Okay. But generally, because it's not HTML, we don't have all these things, document type definitions and what is the public identifier, all those things will not have. We'll directly have doc type and HTML. So this is a brief introduction about doc type, and once doc type is defined, we'll know how to render our browser will know how to render the particular HTML page that is served to it by the server. Okay. So this is basic of doc type, and then we'll go into the next things. Okay. So we know about this URL, right? So URL is something like Uniform Resource Locator. So as I was telling you yesterday, when I go to my browser and click google.com, what happens is request is sent to the nearest it is nearest server through our different hubs we have, and it finally reaches the server. Once the server is reached, it responds back with whatever the index.html or whatever file it serves back. So once that particular part what we type in the top is called as URL, and the first part generally you might have known this. So this is called as protocol that we use to communicate between the client and server. Generally we use HTTP protocol, hypertext transfer protocol, which is used for transferring hypertext like HTML kind of stuff. Okay. So once we have this, after that whatever we see HTTP : we see google.com or something like that. That google.com is called as domain name. Okay. So domain name is basically a translation of a IP address. So you might know concept of IP addresses, right? Every system will have an IP address which is on a network. So once an IP address is there, it's tough for users normal people to remember the IP address. There are different versions of IP address like class A, class B, kind of different kinds of IP addresses, right? And it can also have a port. So when you guys might have worked with Tomcat or web servers like that. So when we are running any application on a particular system, what happens is we run that particular application in a particular port. system will have different ports. Our computer will have different ports, 8080, 8090. So there'll be so many ports. Some ports are allocated for the system purpose. Some are open. Any application can run in them. So generally we run our Tomcat or any web servers or application servers in 8080. That's the default port. If you want, we can 80. Sorry, it runs in 80. If you want, we can change it to any other port. So any generally domain name. So when we see this is actually internally translated to something else. Like it can be something like 127.16.18.193. This is the IP address, and then when we give the port name. So what does this actually do is this will know which IP address the browser should go, the request should go to. So when we hit this, the request will be sent to this particular IP address. And in that IP address, there'll be so many applications running in that particular machine, right? Because that's a machine, it can have so many applications running on that. So we'll say this request should go to this particular port. So the request will be sent to 8080 port, and whatever is application listening on that port will take that request and replace back with some response. So once the response is back, our web page is rendered. So that is basically the concept of domain name. So and the end of the URL, so if you see this in this, so this is like the protocol that we use. The other protocol that we use in the browsers is HTTPS. The HTTPS is a kind of secured hypertext transfer protocol, which is generally used while doing sensitive transactions between client and server, like when we are doing bank transactions, things like that. When you need security, people go with HTTPS. And then google.com is a domain name, which consists of two parts. One is IP address, another is port number. After that, whatever it comes is basically what do we call as the path. So inside our application, we can have multiple folders. Let's say I have a web page, I can have my CSS folder, my JavaScript folder, so many things. So path refers to, let's say I have inside my JS, I am referring to some JS file. So I can say google.com/js/my test.js, something like that. Okay, so that's the path. So we can have any amount of big path. So there is some restriction on number of characters in the URL. I think like somewhere around 500,000, but within that restriction, you can have any big amount of URL or path. Okay, so generally another important point of HTML5 we'll discuss later, but we can actually validate our HTML files at this point with there is a validator provided by, I think I have already opened it. Let me see if I have it. W3C validator, right? W3. So this is a validator that so this is a validator provided by W3C, the organization which creates HTML and which is responsible for maintaining HTML. So we can give a URL, or we can upload a file, or directly give content here. So let's say I'll give my sample HTML here, or let's say my test. Okay, redirect HTML. Let's do with this. So I can paste my HTML file here and then say check. You will actually validate if my HTML is valid or not, and get back saying that something is there, something is wrong. So if you see this, now you see by mistake I've added ending body tag after my HTML, which is already there, but it's not there. But it's generally tough to identify when we read it. So this validator is basically a good approach to basically validate our HTML is valid or not. So now if you see, document checking is completed, no errors or warning to show. So this particular HTML is valid now. Got it? So this is, I mean, basically in real time, we don't have to do this every time. When we are building any web page, we generally use any editor. At the moment, I'm using Notepad++, but generally we use any other IDE in a real-time scenario. We might use Eclipse or Visual Studio, or we might use IntelliJ IDEA or anything, WebStorm or anything like that, any other source. All these IDEs will have inbuilt checking. So it will actually, even if you don't mention it, it will show you with the red marks like we see in Microsoft Word, MS Office Word. So when you type a wrong spelling, it will mark you with a red underline, right? So you might see some things like that. Or there will be plugins, extendable plugins for you, wherein you can have those plugins, which will then validate your HTML as and when you edit it. Okay, so that's the basic part of HTML. And then we'll get into details of each of the HTML tags and head tag. What are the different possible tags that can come into head? So HTML is the start of our HTML page. It's the first tag and the root tag for our entire HTML page. So generally, when you see HTML pages, you might, if you open any other web page which is in other language like Spanish or German or any other languages, so you see that in a Google Chrome or anything like that, we'll see a notification saying that, do you want to translate it or something like that, right? So that kind of language definition is part of this HTML. So you can mention what kind of culture it is used, it should be used. So once, and you guys aware of setting a culture in browser. So we have something called as in the browser, you can go to the settings tab, and when we go down, we see advanced settings, and we can go down here and we see language settings. So in the language settings, we can set what kind of language. Like by default, Indians or Americans generally use English, but then countries like Spanish or Germans, they set up their own language so that all the web pages will be translated to that particular language. Instead of every time saying, no, I don't want this, I want to translate it kind of stuff, we can add a language over here. So I can add and do whatever language I want, Arabic or anything like that, so that the web page will be automatically translated into that particular page. So that differentiation is known from this. So when we have add a language attribute here, so the browser will know, so that, okay, my browser locale is something else, it's my Spanish, but this HTML page in English. So let me pop up saying that, do you want to translate it, kind of stuff. Okay. So after that, there can be many other attributes for HTML, but this is one of the important thing that we can learn. So after that, we know inside HTML, we know that there is something called as, first thing that comes up is head tag, and after that we get is body tag. Body tag is something that we see on the screen, whatever visual elements we see, entire stuff go into body tag. So there are so many tags that we need to discuss about body. We'll get there. Before that, we'll see what are different concepts that come into head. So head tag is basically used for meta information. Meta information in the sense like gives more description about our HTML page. Like, do you know how, let's say, I want to search for a Chinese restaurant in Hyderabad. So let's say I opened my Google and I said Chinese restaurant Hyderabad. Or Chinese, specifically I want to search in Banjara Hills. Let's say I want to search in Banjara Hills. I say Chinese restaurant Banjara Hills. So it gives me a detailed list of all the Chinese restaurants in Banjara Hills, right? Do you know how does it actually happen? You guys know how it actually happens? How is Google knowing the restaurants in Banjara Hills? Does it come to Banjara Hills and they'll collect the information and keep somewhere, or keep track of in a dictionary format or something like that? Do you know how it happens, guys? Good. So what happens is, actually any HTML page, most of guys these days are going to web. So they're building their own websites, they're building their own web applications and all, right? So when they're creating a web page, they create a meta information. That's the advantage of head tag. So in the head tag, we mention all the meta information about a web page. Okay, we say what does a web page refer to, and what are the different keywords of my web page, which describes in short let's say I'm building my restaurant web page. I have a restaurant. I'm building my web page, website for my restaurant. So I'll give some of the tags for it, saying that like we tag it in our Facebook or Twitter or LinkedIn, right? So we tag our post with something saying that happy birthday or Independence Day or something like that, right? So we tag our web page with some keywords. Let's say it's because it's my restaurant, so I'll say it's a restaurant. Some of the keywords like restaurant, I can say it's a Chinese. If it's a Chinese restaurant, I'll say Chinese restaurant, and I can say Banjara Hills and all those things. I'll mention all those informations in my meta tag, and I'll then host it on my server. So what our Google do is they'll crawl through all the websites. So they'll crawl through all the websites and get all the web pages which have these particular tags. Let's say I'm searching for Chinese restaurant Banjara Hills. So it gets all the tags. So we can do a simple search also. So Chinese restaurants Banjara Hills. Okay. So it actually got all these restaurants, especially Chinese restaurants, which offer Chinese food. So now, if you see below any web page results, you see some tags below. So there is something called as Banjara Hills Chinese restaurant. So these are the tags that these Zomato guy provided for that particular web page. Okay, and whatever tags that we give in the top, these are basically tags. We are searching for whatever tag content we give here, those will be separated and each one will be considered as one tag. Okay, so and the Google searches for all those tags in different web pages that are available. So whichever are matching will be highlighted. You see Banjara Hills is what we gave in the above tag, therefore it is highlighted. Chinese restaurant is also what we gave, so it got highlighted. So this particular web page has Banjara Hills and Chinese restaurant, so it is most near. And some pages might not have Banjara Hills, it might have only Chinese restaurant. So those things will come bottom of the page, in the bottom of the results. Like we see so many pages will be there, right? In the Google we'll see so many pages. So whichever is very closely matching, let's say I've given 100 tags here. So if any web page matches all the 100 tags, that will be the first result. So that is how SEO works. You know what, you ever heard of SEO? Search engine optimization. You heard it, guys? Okay, so search engine optimization is something like this. What they do is, so how does there's a separate branch of development. So there'll be some dedicated guys in companies who are called as SEO specialists. What they do is they'll make sure that your web page comes in the top of the search list. So they try to come up with new tags, they come up with new concepts, they'll do whatever is required to bring it to the top of the page. So whatever tags are matching to the maximum will be in the first result, and the tags which are not matching completely, which are very little, will come in the bottom of the list. So as you see, let's say, see these guys use so many tags: Chinese Pavilion Hyderabad, Chinese Pavilion, Banjara Hills, Get Menu. So they have used so many things, but some things that are matching is this Banjara Hills and Chinese that we search for. So this is how head tag is very important. So we came to entire description because of to describe what is the importance of head tag. So basically head tag will have all the meta information. Okay, we'll use there can be different kinds of meta information. Some can be used for search engines for searching our web pages. Some will be used by browsers to render it. Some will be used by robots, which are used for scrolling the entire website and do reverse engineering. Like you might have seen this, the concept of e-commerce. Once this e-commerce became very famous, there are, I mean, Flipkart, eBay, Amazon, all these things are individual individual players in the e-commerce platform, right? So they have their own products and all. But you see some websites which will give you comparison. Let's say I want to buy a iPhone. So when I search in a website, in their website for iPhone, it gives me comparison. In Flipkart, the price is this much. In Amazon, the price is this much. In eBay, the price is this much. Have you ever seen these kind of web pages? So how do they know? How do they know that in Flipkart this much, in Amazon this is this much, in eBay this is this much. So there can be some APIs, like Amazon exposes their web APIs. Anybody can use those APIs if they are registered, and we can find out. Let's say if user types in iPhone, I can send a query to Amazon saying I want descriptions about iPhone. So it will give you all the products of iPhone and it will give you the prices. So you can easily compare. But there can be some sites. Let's say Flipkart is not exposing any API. But then still you see these websites showing up what are the prices in Flipkart. How does it happen? So what happens is, like, there'll be I mean, this is another field of research, a job in computer science. There are different jobs, like I was mentioning about SEO. There's another job in software industry. What they do is, like, they write crawlers, something called as crawler. What it does is it crawls through web pages. It crawls through websites. Once the website is there, the entire job is to write a crawler. They go through they crawl through entire web page and read it. So read the web page and store the information in their own database and then show it up. But then they need to regularly redo the same stuff so that the information is updated. So there is a separate department for that who does these kind of stuff. So for such kind of projects, such kind of operations also, we need to mention meta information. Like if you see this is a meta tag which tells how does if a robot is coming and crawling my web page, what can it do? What can it not do? I can restrict that robot. So those kind of information can also be mentioned in HTML tags, in the meta tag. Okay, these are generally mostly used meta tags. We'll discuss each of the meta tags. So one of the most important meta tag that comes in the head part is character set. So there are different kinds of character set, and the mostly used character set is UTF-8. There can be many other CRF. There are many other character sets that they come up. So the character set is basically telling what are the different characters that can be used in my web page kind of stuff. Okay, so but the most generally used character set is UTF-8 across applications or across the web page. Okay, and then the other I mean, this is another important thing which is not part of any meta information, but it is used for rendering the web page. We'll discuss it after completing other things that we already discussed. So another meta tag that comes up is description. So so any meta tag, basically, apart from these two things, any other meta tag will have two different attributes. The first attribute is name. Second attribute is content. So you know about the tag, right? I already discussed with you. So any tag will start with the angular bracket and ends with angular bracket. Some tags, so generally this is a start tag, this is an end tag. Sometimes both of them can be in the same line. Like for example, I have an input tag. I can have some attributes like ID and then close it. I don't have to do like this. Even if I do, there is nothing wrong about it. But a shorthand notation of combining both start tag and end tag is something like this. So at before ending angular bracket, you just have to add a slash. So this is considered as start and end, both in a single tag. Okay. So generally meta tags will be like that. Both start and end will be in the same thing, and it will have two attributes. One is name, another is content. So name describes what is the meta information that we are giving. In this particular meta tag, there is a tag called as description. So in short, if somebody wants to know what is your restaurant, you can have mention here. Or in short, you want to know what is the entire purpose of your web page, you can mention it here. So for example, we are discussing about HTML5 and all. So I can say that learn everything you want to know about HTML5 in this video tutorial, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So that comes under description. Okay. And another meta tag that I was telling you that is used for search engine optimization is keywords. So the name, everything will be same except the values of this name and content. So the name now will have keywords and then the content. So all the keywords will go here with comma separations. So now in this particular web page, we'll be knowing about HTML5 canvas, HTML5 tutorial, doc type and all those things, right? So we separate all those tags by commas. Like you see in your Facebook post or anything like that, we can have multiple tags for the same post, right? Something like that. So if it's a restaurant, what I'll do is I'll write Chinese restaurant, Chinese, comma, Chinese restaurant, comma, probably gobi manchuria or noodles or whatever I want I can write. But there are some restrictions on the length. So for description, you can enter about 500 characters, not more than that. For the keywords, you can enter about 1000 characters. The content of keywords can be up to 1000 characters. You can't have more than that. So you can think of all possible ways the user can search our web page and mention all those keywords here. Okay. And then I was telling you about robots, how the crawler web page. There are generally 3 different values for the that can come with content for the robots. The 3 things are index, follow, and archive. Okay. So index is like, do we want to index our web page or not? When they are reading our web page, do we want to allow the robot to index our web page or not? Indexing is like you guys might have heard of database, right? So when we have database, when we want to search anything in the database, the best way to get quick results is indexing a web page. Like we see any textbook will have index in the start, right? Let's say I'll say chapter 1 page number this, chapter 2 page number this. That is basically called indexing. We can index our entire textbook with in the start. We'll see the index, something like that. So we can do we allow the robot to index our web page or not is the first thing. Next one we say is whether once the web page is there, it can have multiple links inside it, right? It can refer to multiple links. So do we need to follow those links or not is mentioned as the next attribute, which is follow. And then the last attribute, if you want to mention, we can have a comma and say archive. So do we need a web page to be archived or not? So if we say no archive, so if you want to archive, we can say no archive. If I don't want robots to archive my web page, I can say no. So then even our web page, even when a crawler comes and crawls our web page, it can't archive it or it can't extract the content out of it. Okay. So let's say I don't want to follow my hyperlinks which are mentioned it. I can say no before the follow, which means that you can crawl my web page, you can index my web page, but you can't follow my hyperlinks. You can just crawl and see the content. And let's say I don't want to index my web page, I can say no index. So index or no index, or follow or no follow, or archive or no archive. These are the possible values for robots meta tag. Okay. So these are the major meta tags that we use. And coming back to this, this is refresh. So let's say, have you ever seen any web page like, I think Flipkart also does it, flipkart.com instead of it flipkart.in. So if you see, I have typed flipkart.in, I did not try flipkart.com, but still my web page got redirected to flipkart.com. Did you notice that? Or do you want me to show it again? Okay, I'll show it. So how does it happen? So what people do is generally to avoid a duplicate competitor for them. Let's say I only block flipkart.com. Tomorrow an intelligent guy comes up and purchases Google flipkart.in and hosts all his similar website, exactly same. We can build the same website, right? With same features, same UI and all those things, right? So you'll miss the customers. If somebody purchases flipkart.in and he hosts his own web page there, you know the concept of hosting and all those things, right? We have to purchase a domain name, we have to purchase a space, and then we can host our web page into that space. We can discuss on how can we purchase, how can we host our web page and all. But for now, assume that we can link any web page to a domain name, like google.com can be mapped to some web page. So let's say I've created my own web page which is exactly similar to Flipkart and I hosted it in flipkart.in. So he'll lose the customers, right? So what big guys do is they try to purchase all the possible domain names, flipkart.com, flipkart.in, flipkart.co.in, all possible things. So whenever you try to reach any of them, they'll redirect everything to one page. It can be flipkart.com or .in or whatever he chooses. So that kind of things can be achieved using this. You don't have to, I mean, it can be achieved even through JavaScript. You don't write anything and with JavaScript you can redirect it. But this is a default way that HTML provides. Even without using any JavaScript, the plain HTML you can redirect to some other page. So that can be mentioned using this particular attribute, which says that HTTP equiv, which says that whenever web page comes here and it reaches this position, it knows that, okay, I need to redirect my web page to something else. Okay, its value should be refresh, and the content says that after how many seconds I need to redirect to the other page, and the URL of other page is given here. So it can be redirect to HTML, redirect.html. In the case of Flipkart.in, we saw they would have written something like this with content as 0 colon URL is equal to flipkart.com, and they hosted it in flipkart.in. So, or the other option can be the latest. This is the older way of doing it, but the latest web servers like Amazon or Big Daddy or GoDaddy or something like that, what they do is they give a provision of pointing multiple domain names to a same web page. Okay, if you go to the higher versions of purchasing in the GoDaddy or Amazon, these things are generally hosting providers where you can host your web pages publicly. So they'll give you a concept of mapping everything to same web page. So if that is there, no problem. If that is not there, this is a fallback. You can have something like this which will redirect our page. So let's say I have this page, right? I've mentioned it is 3 seconds. So now I'll run my web page. So sample. So after, you see it after 3 seconds. What's happening? See, after 3 seconds it redirected to some other page. I did not do anything, but it got redirected. You saw that? Noticed it? Guys? Okay. So let's say I'll not have this. I commented it out. So we'll discuss how to comment in HTML and all those things. So now when I redirect my page to sample.com, I'll see this is there forever. It will not redirect. So that's the advantage of that. Advantage of this particular meta tag, right? So now this is all about meta information head tag. So this one purpose of head tag will use all meta information for crawling purposes, robots, and search engine optimizations and all. The other purpose of head tag is we have other meta information, like what are the other files that we can include. We can include many other files to the same HTML. We can include some JavaScript files, we can include CSS files, we can include any other images or things like another. So all those things, and we can have some fav icons. You know fav icons? You know fav icons, guys? Fav icons are basically when you open any web page, you see the top a tab, right? These are all tabs, right? So on the top in the tab you see a small icon, which is, so this is because W3 org you have W3. For GoToMeetings you'll have a flower like this. For LinkedIn you have an icon like this, right? You noticed it? So these are called fav icons. If I have a Skype, I'll have a image for this. So this can also be mentioned. So you can when you're creating your own web page, you can have your own fav icon. Like for example, when I open this, so if I don't have any fav icon, it will be like this. By default, it will be like this. Or if I have any fav icon like this, I can mention it. So those things can be mentioned in as part of our meta information head tag. So we'll see how to add script tags, how to add, and it can be any script, but generally we include JavaScript, and how to include CSS files, and how to add our fav icons. So if you see this is how we add a script tag. So this is called script tag. Whenever browser comes to this, it knows that I should include another JavaScript file whose source is random colors change.js. So the path will be based on this. So if we don't give any path, we directly say this. So it will go to the same folder in which the sample HTML file is there. And the same folder, if it finds any file called as random color change.js, it will pick that file and attach to this browser, so that all the functionality available in the browser can be available to the user in this page. Understood? Next thing is link. We have different CSS files. We can write separate CSS files, and we can include this particular CSS file to this. So we do it using link tag. Link tag is generally used for adding CSS files to our web page. So it has two attributes, relation and href. The older versions of before HTML5, we had another attribute called as type. Even for script, we have something called as type, which says that it's JavaScript file. Okay, but in the latest versions of HTML5, we don't need the type tag. We can directly mention href. Script tag. So link tag, we say that what is the source. For script tag, you remember that the attribute name is src. For the link tag, attribute name is href. Okay, but another thing for link tag is what type of relation is it? It's a style sheet, so we need to mention it. And the href, we need to give path of it. If it's directly available in the same folder, we can say styles.css. If it's available in different folder, we can say that css/styles.css, something like that. Okay, that's basically path that we give. So and then the other thing, favicon, I was telling about. So we can say that we can use it using same link tag, but the relationship now is icon. The previous case it's style sheet, now it's icon. So and now the href will have the path to my image. So because favicon is not there in this path, it did not show up. It showed the default thing. So if we can download any favicon .ico, we can download .ico files. ICO files are generally fixed. They'll be fixed length. I think it's 16 by 16 size, I guess. So let's see. Type. It's not there. So you can download any ICO file and keep it here. Let's try this. Sorry, not this. We'll go with this. View page source. So see, this is the icon that they have. So this is the LinkedIn's favicon. I can save it. I'll show you how to go to the page source and all. We'll discuss it slowly. So data drive G and my personal and HTML have this favicon. Right? I'm saving my favicon here. And the name is favicon. So that's not a problem. So now if you see, I have my favicon in the same folder, same path, and I'm referring my href to same favicon.ico. And the name of favicon is also favicon.ico. Now, any image we can convert into, there are online converters for ICO. So ICO converters, if you see, you'll get ICO converters. So you can give any image file to it, JPEG or PNG or anything like that, and you can drag and drop any image and you can convert it into ICO. There are many online converters to convert into ICOs. Okay, that's the basic purpose of this favicons. And then the title. So the title is another important tag that comes in meta information. So that information says about so I'll show you that as well. So sample. So now if you see this on the top, we have HTML5 tutorial. So that will actually help the user if there are multiple tabs, something like this. I have multiple tabs. I don't know which is my LinkedIn. So if I have a title in the top, that helps the user to identify my tab in the top, right? So now if I change it to something else, test. So now you see my tab name became test. So that is the purpose of our title tag. So that's another important tag which generally people use a lot. So let's say I'm in login page, people should know that I'm in login page. So if you see the LinkedIn now, see it says welcome a pipe and then LinkedIn. So we can have like this. So now you see I'm in inbox for Gmail. So it is showing inbox, what is the count, and then my email ID and then Gmail. So let's say I'm in send folder. So you see it changed to send mail. So it actually helps the user to identify in which web page, in which page he is there inside our web application as well. So that's another important advantage of meta tags. which seems to be very small, but it's very important part of any web page building. It gives the professional appeal for any of the web page. Okay, so that's all about head tag. It sounds to be very simple. Head tag is just meta information, but then there's a lot to know about head tag. How does it follows? So another important thing I want to tell about uh, HTML is, you guys might have heard of programming languages. There are two kinds of things. One is compiled languages, one is interpreters. You heard of compilers and interpreters? You know the difference? So compilers and interpreters are basically, like, for example, I'll give a brief description, even you guys know. So C and Java are basically programming languages like that, are compiled languages. So once you write a C program, you name it as .c with extension .c or .java for Java file, and then we compile the program. Once we compile, it's converted to the machine language, right? Or intermediate language in Java. So class file. Whereas in C, it will directly convert to bytecode. So what happens is, so that is basic compiler. So once we compile, we get a bytecode or a class file which can be executed later in a particular environment. Uh, but that point of time, when we compile a program, it knows the entire program. So if I'm referring to a particular function in the top, I declared a particular function in the top and I'm calling that function from bottom of my program. It knows that how to bind both of them because it compiled it, it knows where is what. But interpreter is something different. So HTML, JavaScript, CSS, all these things are interpreted languages. Although these are not languages as such, HTML is markup language and JavaScript is scripting language. But then all of them are language. Basically, language is something like, it's saying computer how to do what to do, because we can't directly talk with the computer. It's a language through which we talk to a application or a computer. Okay, so HTML, JavaScript, CSS, all these things are interpreted languages. Interpreted languages in the sense, it doesn't compile it. It doesn't take entire web page, compile it, convert it into some other format and then execute it. Interpreter language is something like, now I have my entire web page in .html, right? So now interpreted languages, it goes line by line. From the top line, it keeps on executing from top to bottom. So whichever line it executes, it performs that particular operation. Let's say it come across doc type HTML. What it does is, okay, it knows that, okay, whatever is coming down is HTML5. Let's say it came across this particular doc type. It knows that, okay, I need to load my entire web page with HTML4 specification. So it goes to this particular DTD and gets all the possible tags, and it will be ready. The browser will be ready with that particular environment. Let's say it came across HTML tag with lang en. So it knows that, okay, my web page is going to be in English language. So, and then if it comes across this particular tag, meta char set UTF-8, it knows that all the character sets that it should use is UTF-8. And then if it comes across this, it will do something, it will come across this, it will do something. Now, let's say it came across this particular tag, script tag. Now, the browser knows that, okay, now it does that particular, it executes that particular. Although it's a simple tag, internally it has some meaning, right? Like I was telling you, anchor tag has some meaning. It's a representational tag. So whenever browser come across anchor tag, it knows that it should create a link in the web page. Similarly, whenever it come across a script tag, the browser knows that, okay, I need to download some script, whichever is in the source attribute. So it goes, gets that random color change JS file and attaches to this web page. Okay. And when it come across this link tag, it goes, gets the CSS file and adds to it. And when it sees this fav icon, it loads that fav icon and shows it in the top. And whenever it sees the title tag, it names. So before this point, whenever, say, let's say 61, let's say my browser only executed till line number 58. It did not execute 59, 60 and all those things. So you'll not be able to see the tab name as HTML tutorial. Got the point? So it's in interpreted language, something like that. So it executes from top to bottom. Whatever it says, it goes on rendering that particular tag and does whatever operation it's supposed to do. Okay. Now the next concept is about body tag. Uh, we'll see a simple body tag. So any body tag, this is again a deep concept like function, events, onload. These are all events. We'll discuss about it tomorrow, but we'll discuss a simple tag. What is that simple tag we'll discuss is probably pre. Uh, so there can be many tags like this. If you see, there is anchor tags, div tag, so many tags like this. No script. So this is another important, this can be a simple tag that we can see. So in browsers, let's say in some organizations, they don't want JavaScript to be enabled, but they just want HTML to be rendered. So you can disable JavaScript from a browser. So there is a process to disable the JavaScript from the browser. So when, let's say my application is completely dependent on JavaScript. If JavaScript is not there, I can't run my web application. So user should be aware that it's a browser problem and it's not web page problem. If it doesn't render, what does the user think? User think that it's a web application problem. So to avoid that kind of confusion, we can have a tag called as no script. ABCD, I mean, everything is local. So now I was showing you this page, right? This is my entire web page resides in this particular folder called as HTML5. Okay. So the root folder is something whichever we are accessing. Our HTML file is a root folder. Wherever we are accessing our HTML file, that's the current folder. Instead of saying root folder, we can say current folder. There can be another HTML file inside this recordings folder. So this HTML file, so whatever we refer inside this, so sample.html is in HTML5 folder, right? So when I'm referring script as random color.js or abcd.js, what happens is that it actually, we don't have any other path before it, right? So what it does is this web page goes to the same folder as HTML5 wherever this sample.html is there and tries to look for this particular JS file. So let's say instead of it, let's say I've created a folder called as JS, and inside it I created my file called as let us create a file called as, inside JS, let me create a test.js. Okay, this is my sample. I mean, you don't need to have any content, just to tell you. So now if you see inside HTML, I have a JS folder. Inside it, I have a test JavaScript file, right? So let's say I want to mention it in my script tag. So I want to load my another JavaScript. You can load as many as JavaScript files you want, right? So let's say I already have random color.js. I want to load my test.js, right? But the test.js is in which folder? From our HTML page. Our HTML page is sample HTML, right? So from this point of time, how should the browser go? So it should go to the JS folder. Inside JS folder, it's a test file, right? So I'll say js/test.js. Okay, that's how it actually figures it out, which is where is my location. Same applies for CSS also. Let's say I have a CSS folder in the same path. Inside that CSS folder, I have a .css file. Then I'll mention css/styles.css. Got the point? Great. So after that, we were discussing about no script, right? So when JavaScript is disabled, when we have no script tag, we can have whatever content we want. It tells the user that this is not problem with my web page, it's problem with your browser. Go enable JavaScript. We can mention whatever information we want here. And when JavaScript is disabled, this particular tag will be there. Any other JavaScript will not be triggered. So this will be, JavaScript will not be triggered, but HTML, all the entire HTML content will be rendering, but JavaScript will not be executed in that particular browser if JavaScript is disabled. So just to make sure that user knows about it, we have this tag called as no script tag. Okay, and we can have many other tags. So this is what we'll stop it for today. Probably we'll continue from tomorrow again. So from tomorrow we'll discuss what different possible HTML tags that come inside body, and some important tags which are helpful for building web application. So probably you guys can read more about this meta tags, and you can read more about doc type if you want, and probably you can build a sample web page with favicon, with with probably some meta information, with different titles, all those things. Okay.